Are there reasons to believe in any God? I mean, I guess. Are they good reasons? No. No, they're not. The only good reason would be if there was demonstrable evidence that that God actually existed in the real world, and nobody's come up with any of that yet, have they? Maybe today will be different. And maybe pigs will fly. Today we're going to watch a video by Matthew SBG. I've got no idea what that means, nor do I really care. He's going to tell us why he thinks we should believe in God. His God. Not that I suppose he'll have any evidence for any of it, because none of them ever do. It's all just claims and fee-fees and faith, and that is never, ever, ever impressive. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt and see what he has to say. Sound like a plan? Good. So let's get to it.
So the question is asked, why should I believe in God?
And I'm going to jump in 3 seconds in and say that unless you can show that God is actually real, backed up with objective, verifiable evidence, you shouldn't. Are we done now? Can we go? No. Okay, I understand. Because this is what I tell every single theist who asks, and every single one hates that response. It is, however, the only rational response that one can provide. You shouldn't believe things for which you cannot objectively and verifiably produce support. Wishes and dreams don't matter. Facts and evidence do. But I guess we jumped the gun here, so let's see what else Matthew has to say. I don't know if it's going to change our mind, but at least pointing out the irrationality will be fun, won't it?
Well, I have a few reasons. First of all, you're a moral person.
How do you know that? I mean, this is just a video on YouTube. Anybody can watch it. So why would he just assume? And yes, this is another religious video that's getting downvoted into oblivion because I think we'll wind up concluding that he has no clue what the hell he's talking about. These moral claims are irrelevant to the question of whether a God exists or not. His God specifically, remember. He will, of course, just presume that morality means God done it, and that is not at all defensible, but he won't care because the idea just sounds really good to him, right? This is how the religious tend to operate, and that's why they fail so often. Just liking an idea, that doesn't make the idea true. You have to be able to back it up, and we all know that he won't be able to. So, let's just go watch him try.
Whether you like it or not, whether you say that objective morality is true or that it's false or a socially constructed thing and it's just subjective, you're a moral person. Because if I were to take money out of your wallet, you would say, give it back to me, that's mine.
That doesn't make you moral. I really have no idea what this guy thinks morality actually is, but that is not it. What if the money in my wallet were stolen? I can still say, give me my money back, it's mine, even if it isn't mine. You know, I could lie. Am I still moral? Because you could probably have done that to Hitler and gotten the same response. Was Hitler moral? It's really easy to poke these huge gaping holes in the ideas of the religious because their ideas are often really, really dumb. More properly, their ideas are just absurdly simplistic. They lack nuance or critical evaluation. It's just what they really want to be true, but that doesn't make any of it true, does it? Because they don't really understand what morality is, and they certainly don't know where the hell it comes from. None of this makes any sense in light of their existing religious beliefs. If man is inherently sinful, then how could we be moral? Explain that one to us if you would. Of course, they can't because they've never put any intelligent thought into it at all. They're just spouting what they think sounds good, especially to the people that they really want to be watching their videos, not realizing just how dumb it all is. So let's get back and see if he can justify any of this at all. And I don't think we should expect that he can.
You make moral claims when things happen around the world. That's awful. She was innocent. She didn't deserve that.
Sure, because morality has nothing at all to do with your magical father figure in the sky. Morality is what humans do, based on our own subjective desires. That's why we can make these pronouncements, because we're the ones that came up with morality in the first place, and we're the ones that get to define what it is. And guess what? Those definitions change over time as we decide that different things are moral or immoral. Morality is entirely subjective. What is moral here might not be moral over there, and vice versa. This is why morality doesn't prove anything about the existence of any God. Just because you really like the idea of an imaginary man in the clouds, that doesn't mean that you understand what that man is like, if he exists at all, which, let's be honest, you haven't even tried to prove. This is just, well, it sounds good to me, which is positively stupid. Knock it off. It doesn't help your case. In fact, it causes it irreparable harm. Not that I suspect you care.
You make moral judgments when you view things. That means that you were built inside of you. You know, as sure as you are in existence, you know that there is a moral absolute of right and wrong.
The only thing I know right now is that you're an idiot. This is absolutely not true. There are no moral absolutes. Never have been, never will be. It's all just bullshit that you made up in your head. This is just leaping to entirely unjustified conclusions because you really like the idea. This is, again, why these people get downvoted into oblivion, because they are really stupid. They earn the treatment that they get. It also shows just how little experience with the real world these people actually have. Because if you go to, say, the Middle East somewhere, where the fanatical Muslims live, and those Muslims say that throwing gay people off of roofs is completely moral, is this guy going to agree? Maybe, I don't know. Some Christians certainly would, so let's change that. They might say that throwing Christians off the roof is moral. Do you think that they'll go for that one? Yeah, neither do I. So the Muslim can say exactly the same thing that the Christians ought to die, and that proves that there is a moral absolute. Matthew here would obviously disagree, as I would, but that's only because we both come from a common cultural context where we don't think that. The only absolute is that culture colors our perceptions. That doesn't make the culture true or right, because there is no truth or rightness to examine. It's all just claims made subjectively because the people who made those claims where you happen to live tend to think one way, and the people who live elsewhere, they could think another. We don't know. It's sad that these people really don't understand this, isn't it? It's why you shouldn't be delusional, because it just makes you look like a moron.
It's not just subjective. And with that being said, there certainly is a mind that defined it. It's not just a material world. We're not just a brute fact, but rather there's something deeper for us to aspire to.
Yeah, nice story, Skippy. Now prove it. Because this is where the religious typically go wrong, one among many places. Because they're not interested in actual reality. They just really like the sound of their own personal delusions. They make a poor assertion, demonstrably wrong in this case, then they just tack on all the stuff that their religion says is true, even if it isn't, and expect everybody else to take it seriously. Your assertions about your God doesn't make your God real. Your assertions about morality doesn't make your assertions real. You have to take your claims and test them against the rubric of reality, and these people can never do that, can they? Why? Because they are terrified of reality. I've said it before, but these people tend to have very little actual experience out in the real world. They tend to be very sheltered. Now, while I don't think that it's all that important, these people tend not to have traveled much or interacted much with people outside of their little religious social circle. They don't know what's actually going on out there, nor do they care. They just assume that it's all just like what they see here because everybody has to be just like they are, even if they're not. This isn't just a religious problem, but it absolutely is a problem for the religious, and they really need to knock it off.
Okay, Matt, but why believe in God? Why believe in a personal God? Well, there's wonderful evidence. If we look around the world, if we look at life, yes, there's difficulties and suffering and evil, but there's also a great deal of functionality in this world. I mean, the air that happens to be floating around us is perfectly what we need. We have these balls in our heads that help us see wonderfully.
Look at the trees! Yeah, okay, that's officially the metric for determining stupidity. Anyone who pulls this shit is a moron. I just added my own downvote to this video. I don't always do that, but this one's definitely earned it. This is the height of ignorance, and sadly, this is the kind of thing that we see from the religious all the time, right? It's a problem with their assumptions. They assume that we were intended, not that we evolved to fit the conditions that actually existed here. The second that somebody does that, I'm done trying to reason with them because they've revealed themselves to be completely unreasonable and deluded out of their gourds. It's one reason I simply do not engage with creationists. They have taken all leave of the rational senses, and I've got better things to do with my time. If you are that uneducated or that willfully ignorant, you've got problems that I simply cannot fix. Go seek help or get a basic education, because you've proven yourself too dumb for me to deal with in your current condition.
There's a great deal of goodness in this world that is visible and objectively good.
No, it's not, because there is no such thing as objectively good. Of course, what I see from a lot of people is the complete redefinition of objective to suit their own needs. That's why I always take the time to define what objective means in this context. Objective is not influenced by personal feelings or opinions in considering and representing facts. Or to go with the more philosophical definition, objective is that which exists absent any mind. In other words, if we took all minds out of the universe, would any of the examples that he gave still exist? And the answer to that, of course, is no. Everything he said is completely subjective because everything he said was emotional. Emotions make it subjective by their very nature. And that's why this whole thing is just bullshit. Your feelings don't matter to objective reality. Objective reality is that which exists without you there. So this is just really, really stupid, as if that's any surprise.
When you see two people who are estranged being reunited, or you see the birth of a baby for a couple that have been struggling to conceive, man, that's objectively good. You love to see that. When you see a child be taken care of and comforted by a parent, you see the goodness in that. That is objectively good. And again, this points us towards a source of goodness. Okay, Matt, but why Christianity? Why do you believe God is a person? Why do you believe in Jesus Christ?
I'm sure we're going to get there in a second, but he's already ruined his entire argument. There is no source of goodness because goodness is also entirely subjective. You're not going to get to universal agreement over what is good and what is bad. Going back to his "a baby is objectively good" stuff, try running that past an antinatalist. You're going to get a lot of disagreement. Granted, I think antinatalists are idiots too, but that's completely beside the point. If you don't want to breed, knock yourself out. Nobody cares. When you start telling other people what to do, yeah, I got two words for you: fuck and off. Yes, that is completely subjective. I don't pretend otherwise, but you can take your subjective opinion and shove it where the sun don't shine. This is just an example, though, where he's not going to get universal agreement, and of course, he'll have to come up with excuses for that, which we know he will do. But if you need excuses, then your point is already discredited. So get on with your Jesus stuff, because I'm sure that's not going to fail miserably, right?
Well, there's two real reasons. One, with the evidence we've been shown historically, archaeologically, if we just grant the minimal facts that we know surrounding the resurrection, we know that Jesus Christ existed.
Nope, you're wrong there. This is something that I've been seeing a lot lately, and tell me if you're seeing it too. But in academia, there used to be two real voices that questioned the historicity of Jesus, and that was really Robert Price and Richard Carrier, although there were a couple of other voices in the mix. Today, though, there's actually quite a few. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that we don't have any evidence for a real historical Jesus, and in fact, if you notice, the only reaction that we get from any people disagreeing is entirely emotional. They're getting upset. Okay, where's your evidence? No, you're just being mean, because they don't have any evidence. And that goes for anyone who ever claims that Jesus existed. How do you know that? It's the same question that I ask of the religious, because the position is largely religious in origin. People have been told this story for so long that they just really want it to be true, even if they don't believe for religious reasons. Childhood indoctrination is insidious, right? But if you have no evidence, then you've got no credible reason to believe it. And I'm sorry, but there is no evidence. Prove me wrong.
No good historian really denies that. Even Christian skeptics like Bart Ehrman will grant that. They'll also grant that we know Jesus predicted his death and resurrection. As far as what we grant as corroborated historical fact, that is one.
You have no evidence for that either. All of this is just claims. The religious have to make them because their entire belief system depends on it. But I've started asking non-religious adherents of this thing where their evidence is too, and they don't seem to have any either. In fact, just asking the question, it makes a lot of them mad. This is not a rational response. It is an emotional one. I'm still waiting for anyone to have a rational response to that question, but so far, no go. Just because you really want it to be true, just because you have an emotional investment in the belief, or a professional one, or whatever, since I think that's true for a lot of secular New Testament scholars, that doesn't make it a good, well-supported position to hold. You need that support, and you just don't have any. That's kind of a problem for you, whether you like it or not.
Thirdly, we know that the tomb was left empty.
No, you don't. You know nothing remotely of the sort. You assume that it's true, but you have no actual evidence supporting it. You can't prove that there was a real historical Jesus. You can't prove that he was executed by anyone. Although, sure, if there was a real guy, he had to have died somehow, but you have no demonstrable evidence for any of it. You have stories in a book of mythology, nothing more. You can't back up any of it objectively. It doesn't matter what you believe. It matters what you can prove, and you can't prove a damn thing. This is not going to change. This is why you really need to hold these people's feet to the fire. Produce your evidence, and my book says a thing, that isn't it. Prove the stories in your book are true, independently of the book itself. Produce your verifiable evidence that shows that these stories really happened as described. Get the faith out of it, and that's something you'll never be able to do with the religious. Why? Because they don't actually care if it's true. It makes them feel good, and that's never going to be enough to convince anybody outside of your faith. So you got nothing so far. What else do you want to pretend we know? Because I don't think you can do it.
And lastly, we know the lives of the apostles, but not just the apostles, also non-believers that then claim they saw the risen Jesus, the brother of Jesus, James, but also Paul.
No, Paul didn't even claim that. If you go read the story on the road to Damascus, Paul only claimed a spiritual Jesus, never a real physical resurrected one. It's sad that these idiots don't even know their own mythology, right? Seriously, go read it for yourself. Acts 9:3-8. There was a disembodied voice. But verse 7 says, "And the men who journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no one." Voice, but no body. No resurrected Jesus. It's just stupid how many people don't know how to read. Then there's the Gospels, which we know were all written anonymously and do not bear the hallmarks of eyewitness testimony. Eyewitnesses don't need a copy from other people, sorry. So you have absolutely no demonstrable eyewitness testimony of anything having to do with a resurrected Jesus. None whatsoever. You have claims, but you have no evidence. And this is why the whole thing is so stupid.
Many other historians, including Josephus, Pliny the Younger, people like that, also wrote of Jesus' crucifixion
based on stories they had been told. None of those people were direct demonstrable eyewitnesses to anything. And that's the point. This is not evidence that Jesus was real. This is evidence that people believed that Jesus was real. Belief doesn't make it true, and it doesn't matter how many people keep saying that, it's still going to be the case. Claims don't make facts. Facts are facts, and claims are claims, and the two will never meet in the middle. It doesn't matter how much faith you have. That's never going to convince anyone either. So knock it off. This all just makes you look dumb.
We know that Jesus was a real person who died on the cross. And if you look at the life of the apostles and Paul and people like that, granted what I just went over, the existence of the supernatural and of a God, we know that resurrection is actually the most likely explanation.
Because you really like the idea. Of course, everything that he said so far has been complete nonsense, so no, this is not a likely or even plausible explanation. The only plausible explanation, at least until you can objectively prove that the supernatural exists, is that people in a giant game of telephone told stories that they really wished were true or believed were true, and decades after the fact, in massive air quotes, anonymous authors wrote some of these stories down, and the religion got going after that. Well, really, after Constantine made it the law of the land and put the full force of the Roman army behind it. That's when it took off, because people were forced into it. This is why the religious keep making complete fools of themselves, because they're either not aware of or not interested in the actual facts of the matter. They're too busy off in therefore Godland, and that just makes you look like an idiot.
But more than that, probably the best evidence, and the reason I actually became a Christian, is because Jesus Christ solves the very problem that plagues my soul.
Well, it doesn't. I've got no idea what he's going to say next. We'll get there, I guess, but it doesn't really matter, because once you do away with the fifis in the faith, and acknowledge that you have no evidence for a real Jesus whatsoever, especially a real magical Jesus, then Jesus can't answer anything. You can't say, Jesus does this, if you can't prove that Jesus is real. Granted, the religious don't give a damn, but let's get back and see which question has been plaguing his soul, and why he's just going to leap to, God done it, as an emotional platitude. Because all of them do it, don't they?
The problem that I spoke about earlier, we're moral beings, but I have no way of actually satisfying the moral obligation that I feel in my heart.
The one you can't demonstrate you actually have. Oh, right, fifis in faith. Sorry, that's not impressive. Just because you really want objective morality to be real, that doesn't make it real. You have to be able to demonstrate that. And they can't do that, can they? They can just assert it. Well, color me not impressed. If you go and talk to moral realists, and I have, this is the problem that they all share, at least in my experience. They just want morals to be objective, but they can't show that they actually are. We're right back to, well, it seems to me, with a very strong emotional component. I really want this to be true. If this is really why you became a Christian, and it's not part of a con, which, let's be honest, a lot of these stories are, then you're an idiot. You have not rationally justified anything. You just really want it to be true. And that's a piss poor reason to believe anything. You're just making a fool of yourself.
We all know, if we're honest, that yeah, even if we say, well, I've tried my hardest to be a good person.
Just breaking in here to point out the obvious, but you'll see this all the time. If you're honest, meaning he's just going to dismiss anyone who says anything he doesn't like by pretending that they're not being honest. This is really, really common. You'll see a lot of people, theist and non-theist alike, engaging in it. It's the assumption that everyone has to be just like you are, or there's got to be something wrong with them. Maybe, just maybe, there's something wrong with you. Have you ever considered that? Well, of course not, because that's emotionally uncomfortable. It doesn't mean it's not true, though, does it? But anyway, back to the video. I kind of cut him off in the middle of a thought.
We all know, if we're honest, that yeah, even if we say, well, I've tried my hardest to be a good person, that statement in and of itself is an admittance of guilt. I've tried my hardest to be a good person implies you failed.
Nope. I am a good person. I'm not perfect, but I don't pretend to be. As I've said many times, by any rational metric, I am a good person. Never been arrested, never gone to jail. I have raped and pillaged exactly as much as I want to, which is not at all. I'm not living on the public dole. I'm a responsible human being. So yes, I am a good person. I'm not struggling with it either. This is just how I am. I get up every day and I go to work and I pay my taxes and I help little old ladies across the street, at least metaphorically, since I don't remember the last time I saw a little old lady even trying to cross the street. If I did, though, and they wanted my help, then I certainly would help them. I bend over backwards to help anyone that needs it if I can. And that's just the kind of person that I am. So, wrong again, Matthew. What the hell else is new?
You failed. You just have, so have I. We all have. We've all fallen short. And only through Jesus Christ, only Jesus Christ works as an explanation of how we can actually balance the books.
That's just a claim, and I don't care about your claims. I care if you can back them up, and faith and fifis mean absolutely nothing. This is why I am so completely unimpressed with these people. Claims are all they have. They just really want it to be true, and I'm not interested in your wishes and your dreams. I care what you can actually demonstrate, and they can't demonstrate a damn thing. That's their problem, isn't it? Oh, and I feel so bad that I'm not perfect. Yeah, because perfection is not a realistic goal. Nobody's perfect. Perfect isn't even a thing. When you have no grasp on reality, it's no wonder that you think you're not good enough, because these people are filled with self-loathing. These people have a religion telling them what a bunch of miserable assholes they are. Well, of course they are. That's how they get you to stick around and keep filling the collection plate. That's how they take advantage of you, and the longer that you hang around, the more that you do it to yourself on their behalf. You tell yourself what a terrible person you are so that you can buy into their solution, which isn't demonstrably true. You become your own worst enemy. You get addicted to the religious mind poison. Knock it off!
If there is objective right and wrong that we established exists.
Let me stop you right there. If is not because. You haven't justified that there is an objective right and wrong. That's your problem, not mine. You need to be able to prove it, and you're not even trying. None of them are. They just really want it to be true, and wanting doesn't mean anything. So we're right back at square one with him making unsupported assertions as if they are true, and then assuming that because he really wants them to be true, well, it's really gotta be. That somehow his theology has a point because it makes him feel good. You are missing the whole problem, which is that you believe things for which you can offer no objective evidence in support. If is never going to be because. Stop making yourself look dumb.
We know there must be some kind of comeuppance. There must be some kind of justice in the end. That absolute goodness must be satisfied. Otherwise, it never existed in the first place.
And you don't like that, so your silly blind faith has to be true. This is something that happens a lot. You'll get people who say, bad people just might not all get punished, so there just has to be a God. First off, learn to deal with reality. Just because you want perfect justice doesn't mean it exists. This is just another way to sell the scam. Appeal to things that people believe irrationally. Make empty claims that your beliefs solve that problem, even though it can't be demonstrated to be true. Play make-believe. Instead of just learning how to deal with the world that you actually live in, invent a magical happy land in your head where all the things you really wish were true actually are, and then retreat from reality because you're terrified of it. That's all that these people are doing, and they desperately want us to go along for the ride. No thanks. Hard pass. I'm not that dumb.
It would be like, because I made a mistake in mathematics, it just stays that way. No. Good math prevails over bad math.
Not really. I mean, true math is a thing, but if there's nobody there to correct you and nothing you do has any real-world consequences, does it really matter if you think 2 + 2 = 5? Is it going to change anything in your life? No, absolutely not. People go through life believing all kinds of asinine things. I mean, look at this guy. Doesn't seem to be hurting him any, does it? Although I wish it did. I wish stupidity was painful, but unfortunately that's not what is true. I mean, I guess he is making a fool of himself online, but if that's all it does, then maybe the positives will outweigh the negatives, at least in his mind. Maybe he's making money off the backs of dumb people, and his ignorance is making him a living. You see that online a lot too. I don't know, and I honestly don't care, except insofar as he's spreading his own ignorance to others. But that's what I'm here for, right? Exposing stupidity wherever it hides. And it doesn't tend to hide very well in the modern world, does it? That's kind of sad.
The same way absolute good is going to be satisfied if it exists. There is a personal God, the God of all goodness, and he actually put on human flesh and came down to satisfy goodness within you.
I am not impressed with your silly stories. I care about the facts, and the sad thing is, he doesn't have any, at least not so far, and he's kind of running out of time, isn't he? At least he hasn't presented any, I'll go that far. You are just spouting nonsense, and anytime it's been testable or can be rationally evaluated, it has been revealed to be complete crap. Not that he cares, but he was supposed to be telling us why we should believe in his God, and so far, his only argument has been, because it makes me feel good, and you should be just as dumb as I am. I'm sorry, but I'm not buying into either one of those, and I don't think you should either. However, if you disagree, explain why down in the comments. That, I think, could be an interesting conversation.
To fulfill what you couldn't, but he also took the punishment that he didn't want you to have to take. There are plenty of reasons for you to believe in God, but the best one is because what Jesus Christ did for you on the cross was a personal love letter to you saying, I love you and I will die for you. That is at the center of Christianity, and it's available to you no matter what you've done, no matter what you've said. Thank you for watching. We'll speak soon.
I kinda doubt it. Now, this is hardly a surprise, but just about every one of these videos is just, but my feels. And that is not remotely impressive. Or at least it's not impressive to me. You can let me know down in the comments if it's impressive to you, but I think that's kind of sad. I don't really care what you want to be true. I care only what you can show is true. And people like Matthew here, they're just garbage at that, aren't they? All he can do is spew what he already has faith in and just wishes was true, whereas I want to know how he demonstrates that any of it actually is. Granted, I figure he's just ignorant. Most of them are. Most of them have never actually examined the existing evidence and come to the most rationally supported conclusion available because they just don't care. But I care, and you should care too, although I really can't force you to do it if you don't want to. If you're watching the channel and you don't care, Why are you watching the channel? Are you some kind of glutton for punishment? You can explain that down in the comments too. The only standard here is truth, and the only way to get to truth is through verifiable, demonstrable evidence. That stuff that the religious just don't have. If you don't care about the truth, the verifiable truth, then do us all a favor and just go away. You're wasting everyone's time, and you're just making a complete fool of yourself. That is nothing that you or anyone else should be proud of. Knock it off.